fancy intro music. Yeah. Woohoo!
Echo, and Rev and I have even talked about this in the past. Back in October, we had the first run of this Franklin event. It went over like a lead balloon. All right, it was the worst version of Incursion SMS events that had happened to date. All right, it was terrible, and that spurred a lot of conversation because players like Ripper have come out before and said, listen, just like in the very first month, Echo, you might remember, he said Incursions have a very limited shelf life. Like, people are going to get tired of this. It's going to lose its shine. It's a DOA feature. Now, you guys had committed to not allowing that to happen, so you wanted to make some changes. It feels like between that first run and that second run, because let's go back, Bubba. Run number 1, we remember it was 6-hour events. Okay, who remembers? 6-hour events in specific systems with specific ships, and it was incredibly difficult for people to do the SMSs. It was bad. We fed back. Echo, you and I had a lot of conversations, and they corrected them for the second round by introducing galaxy-wide damage. All right? Which was better, significantly better than the first run, and that actually ran a couple of times. Then you came out in October with the Franklin PvP event, which was arguably even worse than the month 1 version. And then you came out and said the magic words. Leading into November, after we had finished the October version, you said in the community, that we are stopping Incursions for the end of November. We're going to postpone them so that we can go back to the drawing board, that we can make this better. That was what was stated to the community leading into what would have been the end of November. Then in December, you had it scheduled. So that would lead me to believe that improvements had occurred. That would lead me to believe that you guys had spent a little bit of time on it and that you were ready to take another stab at it. But December, end of December, ended up getting postponed because we had a massive technical bug, to which, by the way, the community praised. Community said it was the proper and responsible thing to do to cancel the December Incursions because of the repair bugs, the dry dock bugs, and the having to reboot the game and all that stuff related to, and you couldn't attack bases if they had dry dock H. Like, that was a major problem, and you took the correct course of action in canceling the end of December. But it was still on the schedule. So that leads me to believe that we had skipped November to make changes. We were ready to launch it in December, but then we had another bug that came through and prevented that launch. And here we are now at the end of January. So 90 days later, and I would still expect that changes would have been made to make this a more palatable feature. And I don't think that's what we got. Echo, walk me through this timeline, please. What changes were actually made between October and now?
So, starting with that first one, what changes were actually made? Obviously, everyone saw that very few changes happened. There were incremental changes that happened where we adjusted some of the timers to see if maybe that was going to resolve some of the issues that people had with some of the events, which is why we saw similar events going up. Again, I think that you're a pretty big believer in this, DJ, about trying one thing sort of at a time to see if it makes adjustments, which is why we saw an introduction of the 6-hour timers instead of the 12. Obviously, that didn't go over well. So along with other things, Incursions were canceled. And we totally understand that people were looking for much larger changes. And now, to walk through the timeline, so November, Incursions gets paused, right? Then in December, like you said, Incursions were on the docket, but were canceled due to bugs. Now, from November to December, we were looking at changes and realized to make impactful changes, it was going to take more time than we expected. And so we weighed the pros and the cons this month with community feedback saying that, hey, like, I understand that you guys want to make changes and that this event isn't in a good place, but it's halting progression. I've seen quite a few people saying right now, how am I supposed to get my Mantis? How am I supposed to get my strike team? And so we understood that we weren't going to have everything changed in a way that the community was potentially expecting, or the gravity of changes, but we felt like delaying progress was going to be in service to a lot of the community. So we tried to make some incremental changes and move forward with it. We've seen that maybe wasn't the correct course of action. And so like we said in the message yesterday, we're sorry that people were let down by it, right? And so we're going to see if there's more that we can do for the next time it's run and really put more time and effort. And it was hard due to the timing of that as well. The holidays brought with it challenges that some of us didn't foresee. And then January with the new year, more challenges came up that we potentially didn't foresee. And it's just something that we really needed to come together as a team. And yesterday was that point where we really looked at it as like, we need to get some momentum on some of these bigger sort of expansive changes for what Incursions is at its core.
So, Eco, I have a question about the process, if you don't mind. Because you mentioned...
Right. What we're here for, dog.
Yeah, you mentioned small changes. And one of the frustrations that I personally have is the community out there, DJ helped with this, was really big on providing feedback July through October. One of the biggest pieces of feedback provided was that the 6-hour windows were strongly disliked. Like, that was one of the major initial changes based on feedback. So I think another part of the frustration for me is not only was this run as like a copy pasta of what many agree the worst version of Incursions ever, it literally then went back and added a piece that had been strongly asked to change because it was bad, and then that got added on top of it. So not only did we get our copy pasta, we got copy pasta plus something. The community worked really hard to ask to be removed. Like, what in that process, how did we get back to going in, or at least I think a lot of our opinions, in the direction that's the opposite of where we were going before?
So it wasn't. So you're absolutely right. Like, the 6-hour windows was a point of contention for sure, because it was 6 hours of attacking and 6 hours defending. I think the team wanted to see if there was something that would be different if there was 6 hours of attacking and defending, so people still had the opportunity to get everything done in that time window. And also, and I'm sure the chat is about to go wild here, but there was feedback about people enjoying the 6-hour time window yesterday. I mean, I read it and it shocked me too, but there was feedback from people. Again, I know this. People aren't going to believe it, but like, there was feedback yesterday that people were saying they enjoyed the 6 hour.
I mean, Eco, there were also people who said they enjoyed assault. We recognize that's a small number of people.
I understand. I'm not saying it's a bunch. I'm just saying that it's not non-actionable feedback. Now, again, I'm not saying that what came out yesterday was what we were hoping we were hoping that people would like it, and obviously we missed the mark on that. I'm not arguing with that. But it wasn't put out. Nothing we ever put out is meant to be this is what you get, enjoy it kind of thing. I think, DJ, you said something interesting to me, was like old Tupperware meals, right?
Yes.
Wow.
So
we were talking about, new and shiny versus like moldy Tupperware, leftovers. Rev, it's kind of the conversation we were having. Like, I feel like Bubba, you agreed with Ripper so many months ago that said this feature is dead on arrival, and I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to believe that there was the capability to iterate and keep it fresh and to move forward with an event that was only happening once a month that people could ultimately come to enjoy. And Bubba, I feel like every month we're taking a step backwards. It's just not progress, right? It's moldy Tupperware.
I agree. So, but what I'd like to hear is, what are the tangible milestones and steps that are being taken to prevent something like this from happening again?
Well, we announced it yesterday. First of all, we're going to be coming out with a community-wide survey of changes that people are looking for, and looking at that list and using that in what we're going to be doing. I had a quite long meeting with some team members from the Live Ops program about what Incursions currently is, why they fundamentally don't like it, but then also what people do like about Incursions. Because there are things, even if you hate PvP, even if Incursions for you can't say nobody likes the idea or the concept of Incursions. DJ's one of them, right? There is something there that is exciting, right? There is something about interacting with another server and being in that server that you don't get from other activities in the game. I mean, the server transfer feature and the chatting with other alliances that you don't usually like to get to do is something that is exciting. So those are our action items right now, is making sure that we have clear visibility on what we're thinking about changing, getting feedback from everyone in survey form. It's going to be like an IGN, it's going to be out in community channels, and then really looking at that and having plans and then providing updates on Incursions moving forward. Because a big thing that we saw was there was a lack of communication about Incursions as well. And myself and Beck, are working on being better about that as well.
Let me circle back to one of your action items. You responded to Bubba that we're going to launch a community-wide survey. Now, I ultimately love the fact that feedback can be gathered, but
I understand.
Feels like we've been down that road, Rev. Like, I feel like, God, deja vu.
I strongly remember having a meeting about said stuff already.
Right.
Hence the frustration, by the way, of the 6 hour, because that's another point. We're literally talking about taking a step back. Because to Bubba's point, and Ripper's point, this was something that dangerously could be like a 3-month thing and it was done. Originally, the game wanted to run this 2 to 4 times a month. And everybody was like, you can't do that. That's adorable. So it then had to get adjusted. And it did see improvement. Like, from my metrics, it actually had a 6% increase in approval rating. It sounds like we're on CNN now.
Yeah,
From
I love
July to October.
I don't them off, dude.
But that's good, right? It got slightly better.
Yeah.
But then it took a drastic reversal. And then we just made it even more. Like, we dug a hole in the wrong direction. So, like, to DJ's point, action items are good. I like that Bubba asked the question, but I'm really not trying to say, dude, how do we really believe it's going to be different this time?
Yeah, that's where I'm driving. And if I can consolidate my point, we did. Rev and I and you, Mr. President, and other people actually did have a call to talk about our grander vision, our bigger ideas. And while I will freely admit that at least my ideas were so grand that I did not expect them in 30 days.
You have some big ideas, DJ.
I did. I basically
still do.
Gutted this thing down to rewrite the whole thing. And I understand that can't be done in 30 days, but the feedback has been given. Like, I feel like it's almost, and forgive me for saying this, please provide the community an alternative perspective.
I'm more than happy to give more context on this.
It's almost like the feedback that was already given, the surveys that were already taken, even our meeting privately and internally was completely dismissed, or at least you don't remember. You don't remember because now we're asking for it again?
No. So to give more context, I should have been more clear on this. We still have all that feedback, right? And DJ, I know I talked to you to get a prioritized list of it from you as well, just in case, because again, things change over the past 3 or 4 months, right? The game state has changed. People do things differently. We are taking what feedback we've been given and putting that into the survey so that we can prioritize based off of that feedback.
Okay. All right. So maybe that's a little bit better, Rev. So you're going to take the proposals.
Right. We've heard X, Y, and Z things from our content creators. These are the things that we feel like we can do in a certain amount of time with limited tech. Which ones do you want focused on?
Okay, that actually sounds a little bit better because Rev, I was getting ready to say, man, in one ear.
Survey, you're right. This isn't like a multi-question fill in the blank thing. This is here's a list of things that we are prepared to work on, what do you want us to work on first?
Well, can I ask, based on that, and just going off what we've already done, are there things that are just going to be like non-starters? Because one of the biggest complaints immediately from everybody who provided feedback, whether it was high levels, low levels, the rewards have never felt adequate for incursions yet. That's been something that seems the game has never been willing to move on, never wanted to budge on. We're just not going to increase what you're getting for, in their mind, 1 day of work, right? Even though it happens once a month. Is that something that could actually get better?
Yeah, I don't think that that's a full non-starter. And like, I'm not trying to say I disagree with you, Rev, because that just sounds really defensive. But I will say that I do know that the live ops teams adjusts the rewards monthly and inflates them based on how long.
Well, I'm specifically talking about the sourcing mechanics we have to use through incursions, like officers, the Mantis, the building,
Sure,
stuff
yeah.
like that.
And I think that it's fair to say, and I need to follow up with live ops and get a better understanding of like the design economy, etc. But if we're inflating rewards for other events, I don't feel like there's a reason to not have a conversation about the potential of inflating rewards for incursions as well over time. I don't have guaranteed details on that right now, but like I said, like we change how much, hostiles hunt give on a month by month basis. So it's definitely worth having a conversation. I don't think it's a non-starter, in my opinion, Rev, and I can get more information on whether they will or will not change.
I would like to ask a little bit more of a technical question, and then we can kind of transition.
TJ, you know how I do with tech questions.
Well, no, I don't look for an explanation per se. I'm looking for a change. Bubba, you and I actually spoke about this maybe earlier today, I believe. One of the few rewards that are somewhat kind of cool about incursions, and I do say few, but the loot exo, right? Everybody has mentioned to me, Rev, you included, at one point or another, the loot exo is kind of cool. It's unfortunate that it only is able to be used during incursions. What do you think, Rev, that it would improve the quote-unquote value of incursions if you ramped up those exos by, I don't know, say 5x or 10x, but then allowed players the opportunity to use them throughout the rest of the month? I think that would provide maybe a little bit more incentive, community. I don't know. Is that a thing? Because, Bubba, you and I've talked about it. We like the loot exos. Would you like the opportunity to use those outside of incursions?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Community, what about you guys?
I think that's a given. I don't know if anybody would say no to that one. That's one of the, like you said, that's a few highlights of incursions.
It is. And that could build value if you guys allowed us to use them when we wanted to. Echo.
Okay. I think that's a great question to have. And I mean, I don't know how these exos are coded, right? Maybe it's like we'd have to like copy paste a previous exo and put these things in. I don't know, but it seems like a low technical ask if it's something that we can do. So I think it's a totally reasonable request and a great piece of feedback. Because you're right. People love the exos. I love the exos. Why wouldn't it be? It would be awesome if we could use them more.
Well, I just think that could potentially build a little bit of value of interest. But at the same time, it doesn't matter if they don't work. All right. So we've got to get moving back in the right direction with these things and find a way to make them palatable again, make them exciting again. It's sometimes, Echo, it's a frustrating conversation because there is so much potential in things that you guys release.
Sorry, go ahead, DJ. I interrupted.
Well, I was just going to kind of use an example we talked about on the show here not long ago, Bubba, which was that of, and the community's going to ride on this one as well. So I'll be a bad guy with you, Echo, which was Alliance Star Bases. Now, before that feature ever came out, when you guys hinted to it, Bubba, we had a grand time thinking about what it could do. Sensor visibility into fog of war, remote docking and repairs outside of your own base, and the ability to exchange, minor amounts of resources, nothing game breaking, but just, something. We had all these ideas.
We didn't have to imagine. We could have just gone and read what was in the roadmap.
Well, we had a lot of ideas about what Alliance star bases could have been. Again, we talk about such amazing potential, and now we come back and look and we look at Alliance star bases and what a massive disappointment it was. And I feel like we're doing the same thing here with Incursions. It had potential. And I feel like the community has been relatively patient. When did that come out? Has it been like 10 months now, Rev? 8 months?
I think it didn't come out the last month we had Incursions.
September.
Okay, September. Jeez.
No. I'm sorry. I'm talking about Incursions as a whole. How many months has that run now?
Well, that was July was our first. So we're what, 8 months now?
So yeah, we're 7-8 months, and I feel like the community's been relatively patient, and we just haven't made progress. And is that a bandwidth problem? Is it an understanding problem of what we want, or is it actual tech limitations? Echo, we've asked this question before. Maybe generally, broadly speak to.
Yeah, I think it ultimately, like, if you want to boil it down to the easiest thing to say, like, it could be seen as a bandwidth problem. I think just the team overall has really grand aspirations of what we want to do. And over time, as deadlines sort of start to creep up on us, it starts to become relevant, like what we can do and what we can't do in the amount of time. Now, I'm not saying this for Incursion specifically because it's like, hey, it's been out for 7 months. Why haven't you changed it yet? But, the same people that are running 10 polls every month are the people that also are looking at past events like Incursions and things like that. So there's just a lot of moving pieces going on. And if we have a designated like team of people working on that, and then they have the next 10 poll, it can get difficult. And then, there's always the thing of like, hire more people, slow down on things. We want to make sure that everybody still has something new and exciting to do every month, right? And if we've seen a lot in the tech industry just recently, like if you overstaff sometimes, it can lead to some unfortunate consequences. And say everyone has their own opinions, and I understand that, but Scopely does care about the people that they hire, and they don't want to just hire someone to fire them 2 months later, right?
Let me ask you this, Eco. I get that. That's a very real thing. And what you're saying, arc runners can sometimes be in charge of Incursions, so multiple things on a play is difficult. In those situations, and if that's the case, if you haven't been able to devote energy to an Incursions, why even run a yesterday? Why not just come out and say, hey, we've got more stuff coming up. We're sorry. We're just going to give you this
we're not
chest
done
to
yet.
make up for it. We can't do it yet. Here's the event store. Here's a box. We're sorry. Instead of running it and creating this fire.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Rev. And I think that's a really real conversation to have, which is one of those things why we turned off Incursions when we saw it. Again, I think that because Incursions was getting, like you said, Rev, Incursions was getting better, we thought that the stuff like outside of events, the event rewards were going to help people progress. And then all the other interactions that you get with Incursions would be overall positive, right? And we were incorrect. Right, we turned them off,
and I get. Look, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but we're also.
You're not.
But DJ said the same thing. You expected it to mainly. I know, but what I'm saying is, you expected it to mainly be better, but at the same time, it was a direct copy paste of what everybody's feedback was the worst Incursions ever. So, how do we expect it to be better, though? I mean, if we didn't get time to devote to it, we can't run these things. It's just going to make the community upset with you after it was a good month, except for the Borg grind.
Yeah, and I think that this moment and the conversations I had yesterday is what really like will sort of start those conversations moving forward, right? Like, hey, did we make enough changes where this is going to be in a place that the community wants? Do we still see value in it? And talking with people like you and being like, well, I think the biggest thing is just communication, right? Like, come out and say, hey, everybody, we talked about doing changes. We haven't done a ton of them yet. We put together what we think is the best version of Incursions that we've run in the past. We did 12-hour timers, and we're doing these events because this is what we think is like the bits and pieces, the best parts of what we did. And we want people to still be able to progress. I think that would have been a lot better than what we did for the future. And that's a communication thing. And that's something that I can improve on. And that's something that hopefully I can do in the future for everybody. Because like you said, Rev, like communication is key. If people knew going into this one, like just up front, like, hey, we didn't get to change things as much. It's going to look really similar. Would there have been as much backlash? Or would the people have been as upset because their expectations weren't set to a level where it couldn't be met, you know?
I think that's the benefit of. I'm sorry, DJ. I'm not trying to cut you off on your show.
No, please.
I think that's the benefit of pausing, because there's also the aspect of, and I think Scopely sometimes, we've had a lot of conversations about the experience Scopely has with the game versus players, right? And just as an example, this past month, a lot of people know Incursions is happening. You've got high-level players spending extra money on leaderboards to get their ships ready. You have, entire servers purging their old players to make sure that they can't lose points.
People actually do that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got rated.
Some people will try and throw events, and so I understand trying to purge those people so that they're not throwing events. But
your excitement is proof to what I'm saying is Incursions is more than just a one-day thing. Incursions has a ton of lead up to it. So even announcing it, you have to know it's going to work, or it's best if you don't know with certainty. Like if you haven't been able to work on it, do not run it, because we change our gameplay based on Incursions.
Yeah,
I do have a question about that, Rev. All right,
and my alliance has never purged people leading up to Incursions.
Oh yeah, there are entire meetups like where mortal enemies come together to decide, look, if you were there without a shield, you're being raided the day before, drained completely. We're wiping out all ships.
That right?
Yeah, no, players too. If you aren't there, you're getting booted and looted.
I mean, that's a real thing. Okay, that's absolutely a real thing. I do have a question though. Devil's advocate, if I may. Rev and community.
Oh, don't do it, DJ.
Oh, I'm going to do it.
Devil's advocate only. Don't do it.
No. I genuinely, I want you. No. Listen, I'm only asking. You can't
preface it with devil's advocate and not get a sigh. You shouldn't have done that.
I genuinely think it's a good open conversation. So.
Yeah, I'm just curious about this because Rev, one other comment that I have gotten a ton, right, and I'm getting it today. I'm sure you are as well from APAC and US players. Well, are we going to get this same old bye-week chest? Now, I'm curious because we've all talked about the bye-week chest being horrible, right? It's bad. It's not enough. It's literally, 20% of the number of parts that you could actually earn during a run of the event. It's 20%. Yeah, it's 20% of the number of blueprints for Mantis, and currently, Rev, this is the only sourcing for Mantis. So I posed to you the question verbally in the community chat. I'd like for you to sound off as well. Given that Incursions are broken so horribly bad, and there's no pulling punches there, Echo. They're broke. Okay, is it better for players to cash in on crap events to at least not inhibit their progress on Mantis? And the only reason I ask that, Rev, is because there's no other freaking way to get it, or does it fall on Scopely just to say, okay, here, we're just going to increase the bye week chest because we can't seem to get it together?
Well, I think I don't. I mean, the players shouldn't be punished for issue, and this isn't like to attack Scopely. Players should never be punished for issues in the game. And DJ, you remember when we were doing this, when we were talking about the bye week chest and we provided feedback, my minimum was that a bye week should be the loser level of.
Agreed.
And I still agree to that. That's the minimum.
I agreed with you as well.
And
as a matter of fact, I advocated for more.
Yeah, you did.
I advocated for more. I said
it
should be the winners.
Yeah,
it should be the winners' chest because they don't even have the opportunity to win. If you remove the opportunity for them to even compete, then I think they should get the winners' chest. Because they could have gotten the winners' chest if they had a chance to play. But it does bring me back to devil's advocate.
Okay.
If there are events, Rev. Turf Wars, for example. Faction Hunt, for me, is another one. I hate the event, but I do it because I do find value in the rewards. How many players would find value in the Mantis? Would you have played even this broken, terrible version of Incursions? Would you have played it to get the Mantis?
So, personally, I would play it only to get the Mantis, but I don't play it to upgrade my subspace relay, which I think speaks to a problem with Incursions itself. But either way, I think that it falls on Scopely to properly compensate players for their stuff not working and the issues players are having because of it. So,
This is interesting feedback in the chat. Some people said I would have hated it, but I would have done it because I need the Mantis. So
Well, the Mantis is a
Echo,
must-have.
And that goes back to like what I was saying earlier. Like we've seen people asking for incursions again to progress, and I think we could have just been better about stating that it wasn't going to be revamped to what people were maybe expecting.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it comes down to, if this is such a problem product, can we look at subspace relay building parts and Mantis blueprints and strike team sourcing in an alternative series of events? I mean, you can't indefinitely suspend it, Echo, and you certainly can't multiply the time grind by 500% because you guys can't launch a product that's working properly. I mean, there are people relying on the Mantis blueprints that they could get once a month, and they cannot get it. Then there has to be alternative sourcing, right? I mean, where would you want to put it, Echo? If you did not have the Mantis,
I'm not touching that with a 10-foot full.
No.
Opinions.
Listen, okay.
I'm not saying anything on that one. Where would you put it, DJ?
Do you think that it should be available to players, or do you think that the broken game design of this entire feature is appropriate recompense for players who didn't buy the pack?
Into a quarter to only have one answer.
How about this, DJ? I'll give you a suggestion. How about that?
Thank you, Rev. What do you think? What can we do about the Mantis now?
What is something that we do once a month that hasn't been updated in 4 years?
Cosmic cleanup.
No, that actually gets updated. I was either going to say Faction Hunt's already a hell of a grind. Why not Crucible of War? Make a special chest using the Crucible of War currency where you can turn in all of your Crucible of War currency for either Mantis blueprints or Subspace Relay, but you can't get the uncommons.
Heck, add Strike Team in there too.
Exactly. Put all of them there and you make a choice. And that would actually update Crucible of War for the first time in literally 3 or 4 years. And we have it every month, so you know what's coming every month.
Well, now listen, Frag, you don't do Cal with the trophies, because you're right, that's for directives. Put it up with the gold trophies in the officer section. That's where you put it, up there in the utility section. Do it with the individual gold trophies and not the alliance trophies. You're right, you do need the directives. Those are the alliance trophies. Use the singular individual gold trophies up in the recruit section. That's where you could put them.
Either way, I'm happy with that. But there's your easy answer. An event that has needed updated for years. There's something that already runs on the schedule. Have at it.
The entire point of this, and then we can move on to our next topic. Echo, the Mantis is vital. It's vital for sourcing for PvE. It's vital for players who do like PvP. It is one of the few tools in this game that actually serves a purpose to the entire community. And as of now, it is currently unavailable. Please, please, please pass along the sincerest and most passionate of requests of, listen, we've been very patient.
You got more than just me listening to this.
Incursions aren't working.
You got more than just me listening to this right now, DJ. So just to be clear, like this conversation is being heard by multiple team members. So I will make sure it's passed along.
It has to come somewhere else. And listen, even if it did, even if it did come up somewhere, maybe not necessarily the strike team officers, but the blueprints themselves, obviously that's finite. It would be a short-term sacrifice. You do it a couple of weeks or a month or two, at least you could get it. I don't know. I don't want to take anything away. That was one of our complaints with the Borg loop, Rev, right? Like you're sacrificing something else to participate in something else, but at the very least it's finite. We've got to get that. We've got to get that into the hands of the community. Have to. All right, Echo. I'm going to have Rev take up one of his points here today, since I got the big one. I got the elephant, Rev. What do you got?
Well, I'm actually going to ask Eco. This is going to put a little pressure on you because I hope you remember it. When you were actually on my last live stream, we asked you a couple of questions that you said that you would prepare for here. One thing that I want to make sure is not forgotten for all those who did buy the Mantis, suffered for months due to issues. Has their comp chest been determined and sent out? You said you would have an answer by the time we did State of the Game.
Yes, it has not been. Yes, I have an answer. It has not been determined, and with everything that happened yesterday, the conversation got delayed more.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
I love how it came up till Monday. Yesterday. We were going to talk about it yesterday, then Incursions happened.
Well, I mean,
oh God.
Okay, Rev.
Yep.
I told you that I would follow up on it
Yeah.
by the time we had to the game. I have followed up on it, but no, the exact details of the chess has not been determined yet.
Okay. I mean, I'm sorry it was such a short one, DJ. I was hoping that would actually lead to a longer conversation, but
no.
Okay, community. Man, never mind. I don't want to paint.
I mean, we
them into
both
a
have
corner.
more.
How about
points,
another 40 loyalty chips? All right, it's been a rough day. Okay, can we just get another 40 loyalty chips and we'll call it even?
I am not trying to mitigate how rough of a 24 hours it's been for the community. I'm really not. But can we talk about the past 28 days at all too?
Let's transition. Let's transition to assimilation part 1. All right, I'm good with that. Rev got a quickie in there. I'm sure he's got more on the January arc, because that's honestly, in all fairness, community, that's where I thought we were going to be spending the majority of our time. Rev, Incursions happened. It was
same. I mean, that's the whole point. Me doing the survey I did about this past month to get player grades. I mean, I didn't think we'd be talking about Incursions at State of the Game.
Yeah.
And what were the player grades? Because do you want to talk about it, or do you want me to talk about it? What do you want to do, Rev?
Well, I mean, I figured all of us would. DJ, I don't think
I sent it in a bunch of chats.
My grades are coming out today, literally at the conclusion of our interview. Bubba Joe is here. He is prepared to issue his grade. Putz, Mark, and Karkin are here to issue their final grades. This could be a fun little segment to actually issue our grades together.
Yeah.
But if we were to do such a crazy, impulsive thing, obviously, Mr. President, we would begin with you. Please. Me? Yes.
Oh,
Mr. President.
I don't give grades on. No, I can't be objective. It's not possible.
Can't be. Of course. Of course you can be objective.
No, I can't. Oh my gosh.
Of course you can.
I can tell you what I saw this month and what I experienced.
Okay. And I think that's exactly what we're asking. What did you think?
And if you liked it or didn't, that would do exactly what we're asking for without putting a letter on it. So,
let's have a conversation. Yeah, what pain points did you feel?
I have not been playing as long as everyone else. Everyone knows this.
Okay.
I was still doing the Borg grind every day for different reasons.
Okay, that's valid. That's valid.
So,
some people were.
So I saw improvements and it was engaging to me. Now, I didn't mind as much the decision between progressing my faction and progressing the fleet commanders, because I have a faction ship that I really like, and I'm not I'm not in a rush to get that next faction ship. And
so you're saying,
to be frank, I know things that are coming, right? We kept saying this is the foundation. I know stuff that's coming. So I saw with what my eyes were, and I liked it, right? I thought that the solar armadas were really engaging, and I actually have a stat about that. But also, I am taking my time with things because I pushed really hard to try and get up to speed with everything, and now I'm sort of stepping back and I'm letting myself do things at a gradual pace. So I know for a lot of people, it was really frustrating having to choose between charged nanoprobes directives and independent credits, or directives and faction credits, or independent credits and faction credits. And that is something that, we spoke about with Mr. Tiger on this very show. I think Hugh is a really amazing officer. I think fleet commanders provide really interesting new tech that we can utilize potentially in future things. I thought this month brought a lot of new, cool, interesting things to the table for someone still participating in the Borg grind.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's a legitimate perspective to have. And I think that some people do in fact share that with you. Okay. I think that there are other players who may not. Me personally, Bubba, you and I talked about this. I've even said it on the last show. I was not horribly offended by this arc, but I also recognize that I am very much in what I would deem the target audience for this feature. as far as Borg goes. The Borg spheres and the Borg exos and the grind and the epic chest, the rare chest. I'm very much in that target range. Rev, we haven't actually asked this. If you were quickly, off the top of your head, identifying the target range for the Borg Solo Armada loop, what would you define that range as? Like, where's the sweet spot? And it doesn't have to be like 1 or 2 ops levels. Like,
No, it's
who
the
do you
40s.
think who do you think the entire general target audience is?
The 40s, where most of the game is either at or entering in very soon.
Do you think that most of the game is in the 40s, Rev? Is that a firm, like, do we believe that?
Okay.
I don't believe that.
So
I feel like there's still a lot of 30
no,
G3
there are,
players.
but I can tell you that the largest bracket range in my survey was players in the 40s.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just to counter that point just a little bit. I mean, your community could be different, and there's nothing wrong with that. But from what I've seen, it's like mid-30s.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I've said for a long time that I believe right now the game is between 35 and 45. But we're also entering a point, especially because of the economy improvements over the past 6 months. And now
Here-
I'm doing devil's advocate. A lot of people have been pushing up very quickly, very recently.
I have a question for you, Rev.
Okay.
And DJ, I hinted at this one a little bit when we were talking earlier. So the Borg Solar Armadas are really meant for tier 9 Vidar users, people that have basically sort of gotten to the end of the Vidar progression. How many tier 9 Vidars do you think there are currently in-game total right now? You had to guess.
Well,
We said earlier there's roughly 235,000 people logging into Star Trek Fleet Command
Every
per
day.
day.
Yeah.
How many?
I just want to point out that I was not going to actually drop that number, but the age-old question now, Rev, has finally officially been answered. I'm just going to. Sorry, I just had to put a pin in
Well,
that.
I mean, this is tough because the Vidar hasn't been new content for 3 years, so then I have to try to think: is it as important for new players who don't hear content creators telling you to pick it up as it is for everybody else?
Yeah, absolutely.
So for your active daily players, I would like to think at least half of them have a max Vidar.
Right.
So let's
DJ, did you
let's
have
give you a
a
number?
rough
I'll give you 130.
before then? Or Bubba Joe? Yeah.
What?
I'm
Bubba,
going
you
to guess.
You guess.
I'm going to guess that it is less than 90,000.
Okay. Are you feeling okay?
Out of-
Bubba Joe? Are you a little under the weather?
He's got a voice thing.
Oh, okay. I want to just make sure you were feeling okay. My bad. Okay. Indeed,
I
man.
am not feeling well.
No,
but
he's-
DJ
yeah,
drags me out here, because
Well, we appreciate
got
you
more
coming
flight
up,
driver.
Joe.
Dude, go away.
All right, let's look in the chat. Killer Ab says 80%.
I've seen a lot of 53,
Tiberius at 50 plus. If I was going on a percentage, and you said that the average ops level in the game is probably still mid to late 30s, which I also believed. I don't think it's quite 40s yet. I would say probably
I say they're getting
35
into
to
the
37.
40s, but it's still high 30s.
Yeah, so let's say 35 is the average general position of a player. And I wanted to show this in the chat. Now, this is part of my supporting argument, Rev, because we've heard this a lot. How many of you at, say, Ops 30, 31 have a Tier 9 Vidar? Because, Rev, we've talked about this, how the Vidar is one of the most important ships early. You can unlock it at, remind me, 25. You can unlock it at 25.
It's also one of the only special ships you can max immediately. No locks.
That's correct. So at 25. It's 25. I told you that, man. So 25.
I thought it was 27.
So 25 is where you get it. My prediction, community, would have been it's maxed by 30 at the latest. And I would have aggressively said, Rev, 28 or 29. It is a viable replacement for the 26 ships. So I think that by 30, you have it maxed. Is that a reasonable assumption, community?
I'm curious what the number is from Eco. Like how he obviously has the number. He's willing to tell us how many max Tier 9 Vidars
he gave it to me, and I was floored.
The live ops team pulled it, looking at over the last 30 days. So accounting for anyone that might have decided to get to Tier 9 in the past 30 days during the arc. So total, okay? That number, I'm scrolling back up. Oh, I put it in the other chat with you. It is.
Would you like me to read it?
6.3%.
Now, Rev, when he read me that number,
Wow.
There are 15,000 tier 9 Vidars.
That's it.
That
when he gave me that number,
shocking.
that almost pissed me off, Rev.
That makes it feel like we've been doing a terrible job.
Well, yes. And you know what else it tells me? You know what else it tells me, Rev? It tells me that there is so much noise.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of this being 35 plus was to be the next stage of evolution. That's why they required a tier 9 Vidar.
Yeah, that's
so. When I hear all this noise and all these surveys and all these complaints about the content being too big for them, and we've got 6% of players that have a tier 9 Vidar.
Like I was way off. Like I truly thought there'd be 100,000 maxed Vidars out there. That's
Fox, 15,000 in the game, and he's like, I've got 2 of them and a third one I could build.
Well, hell, even solos aside.
Here?
I mean, for faction credits, we push this thing all the time. Independent credits. Why are people not maxing their Vidar?
And I've seen a universal sentiment about no longer doing the Borg grind, or, I can't go and do solo armadas because it's locked by 35 or getting the officers.
Wow.
So we looked at the number. 15,000 tier 9 Vidars.
Well, then that brings me to my question. I mean, what changes do y'all make if the number is that low? Because that obviously really impedes people who can participate in your brand new mechanic.
What?
I think it was incentive based. If there is truly only 6% of players who can even earn the directives for these things, then you look at officer sourcing, Rev, you look at the bigger targets and these materials and then the fleet commander stuff, which opens up earlier. Like, it almost feels like another content push, which is why all this content happens at 35, but it's aggravating, right? Like, there needs to.
You know what, DJ? This actually.
You and I.
I just sent you the results of my survey, and I had told Beck this. I was really shocked by some of the results I got. If you go to the feature one I showed you, and we can share this with the people, obviously, whenever we get back to the grading, but it was overwhelmingly positive versus negative that the feature was good, and grind wasn't as big of an issue for as many people as I thought it was. And this would explain
why. As a matter of fact, I'm going to share this in the graphics room. They were
already doing the grind.
Permission.
Right.
You guys listening in podcast form, take a look in the graphics room. You'll see.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, DJ.
I was just going to point out some of the data that Rev has collected here from his survey, with over 1,000 players reporting as far as the feature. Now, Rev, give a little insight here. When you talk about feature grading, are we talking fleet commanders? Are we talking Borg? Or are we talking kind of like just
so it combines
merged?
Both with a grading rubric. For those who haven't seen my video, there's an actual grading rubric of points, and you determine whether something has value, detracts from the game, etc. So the question for this one is actually worded, and by the way, I have not sent all the raw data to the Overlord, so if y'all want to jump in on this, y'all still can. But like an A grade is absolutely adds to the game in a positive way. A C grade could have been better, but doesn't detract. And an F is like a flat failure. It's assaults. So going by what was put in, just the raw number, you see that almost nobody gives it an F. It's extremely low. A, almost 10% of players said that it was a positive addition completely, and B, benefits. And if you take just a C grade as a pass, which most people would, like 80% of the game thought that the features combined were great additions to the game. And I thought the Borg grind alone would have brought a lot more negative into that. But if not everybody has a max Vidar, so they were already doing the Borg grind anyway, this makes more sense why they're not as upset as maybe I am, who had been done with Borg for months, only used away teams, and now have to go out there and just 20, 30 minutes a day.
It does kind of speak to the target audience as well, right? People who engage with the creators tend to be more aggressive or more into the mechanics, more into this game. It's a little bit more than just a casual, I'm going to play while I'm pooping kind of game. You look also at this. 1 second, Echo, and then I definitely want to come to you. I want to point out one other staggering figure, Rev, in your research, which was your ops level. Out of these 1,000 responses, even of our more dedicated audiences that continue to listen to us.
Yeah.
Out of your responses here, you've got 47% of all your responses are 39 and down, which supports what Echo was saying about the average ops level in this game.
Yeah.
47% are 39 or lower. So it makes me feel like, as a dedicated player, and I know Bubba, he just stepped out. Mark, you probably feel this way. I certainly know Ripper does. Rev, you probably do too. And community, you are probably going to feel how maybe I can represent you guys with the following statement. Echo, this almost makes us feel like you're not writing for us. Like, even though you kind of are, we look at something like grind. We look at something like, the rewards from the Borg loop and the fleet commanders and stuff, and how it has to be such a high level before we really get any tangible benefit. And it's funny, Red, because the 35 and down players are saying, well, they're writing everything for 35 plus, and maybe they're just trying to get you there.
Yeah.
If the numbers are that dismal, which we never would have guessed, but if the numbers are that dismal, then maybe it makes a little bit more sense about why people need to get there. And the next question then becomes, why are people not there?
No, we were talking about this earlier, DJ, right? And I think that there are two sort of points to the argument that's being made. There's content is for 35 plus, leaving everyone that is below 35 out of it, and then content isn't rewarding enough for people at the highest tier, right? And so, speaking to the first point, we talked about this a little bit earlier today, DJ, about people being, the content being for 35 plus and people under 35 not having enough to do. See, maybe I'm looking at this data a little bit differently than you guys are, right? What has been one of the largest topics of conversation since I've been here about Star Trek Fleet Command? One of the biggest controversies, one of the biggest cry-outs for change. Grind.
Less grind.
Everyone drink. Grind.
Screen time.
Screen time. So, leading up to 35, if we continue to tack on more loops, like imagine at 25, 27, we made all the stuff for 25. Mm-hmm. So that means at 25, I have Stella. Well, Stella's like 27, but I have Stella, Vidar, Franklin, Devore, Defiant, Amalgam.
Not Defiant yet.
Well, no, I'm saying imagine if we did make Defiant for 25.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because to your point, I talk about this a lot. The 20s are all specialty ships now.
Imagine how many things people have to do leading up to 35. And so, and maybe we need to be looking at maybe it should be 34, maybe it should be 33 when people are finishing these things. Maybe 35 is just like a arbitrary number, then we could be better about that. I don't know how they chose that number. But if you make content start at the there, you're loading everything at the front.
I mean, I do agree with the idea of building content that you level into. I think
and that's
my more issue is just
what this whole progression of the Vidar and the Borg loop has been meant for, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I look at the number of 15,000 people with maxed out Vidars, it means they didn't find any value in finishing it, which we're trying to give more value to do something that you're going to be doing starting at 25 that you want to feel like you want to do. And then you gradually go into the other things. Now, the other argument, which I know that Trader felt this way, Bubba Joe felt this way, is that, well, at the top end, what do we have to play for? And I totally agree that it's something that we need to be looking at. I was talking with DJ today, and I know Bubba Joe, DJ reached out to you about things you would want to see as tangible, exciting rewards that would be worth engaging with. And that is something that I'm having discussions on for future updates already. But this is the other thing, because it's well, how come there isn't exciting content for people in G5? Well, it comes back to, what would happen if we made a piece of content just for, let's say, 47 plus, when we're already having this discussion about having content for just 35 plus? And then it also doesn't solve the issues that we have of giving too much stuff for low end. People are upset because they can't get the new content because they're not at the high end, and then we're scamly, scopely, like however you want to say it. We're forcing people to push to an ops level to get the new content, which we're not trying to do.
My question for you, Eco, then, just as a game company, because I do agree, 5-star is just really rough to be in right now from events and everything else.
Yeah.
Why is there not two directions of development? Why is there not a team purposely making in-game content, so to speak, like for MMOs, Forex, that have for those levels, as well as people making content like the Borg loop for everybody else? Why is it everybody's getting the same content if it's that widespread indifference?
I'd like to expand on that, actually, because I think that it's possible, albeit maybe challenging, Rev, but I do think it's possible. I think Scopely missed the mark. Let's take Borg Solo Armadas, for example, okay? They do have targets all the way up to 60. Problem is, the problem is something
the value decreases.
Trader has said.
Yeah,
exactly. There's no incentive. There's nothing engaging about it. Like the officer shards are about it, but those level of players are not typically free to play, so they've probably bought what they can get. They're probably using an officer that's usable because it's paid, available to pay for. So what is the reward for their engagement?
Right.
And that is where Trader has said that it's really not been there this month for her. Like, there was absolutely nothing that this loop gave that benefited any other area of the game other than the Borg loop internally, and she did not care. And I think a lot of higher level players have found that. Now, this is something that I feel like game design is probably not going to want to hear, because, Rev, how many times do we hear, well, we've got to do something that is relevant to the topic. We got to do something that's thematically tied in. Yeah. So, you know what? I say abandon that. If you want to engage, if you want to create a self-contained loop, so be it. That's fine. It's still going to benefit the majority of players, but you can't forget your most supported, highest level of player that do pay for everything. So you can't create an engagement loop that supports itself when you make it available for sale.
Right. And
so give something that's not available for sale.
Right. And I think sorry, I'm interrupting you a lot, DJ, just because I have a lot of things that I'm prepared to say for the first time.
I just think that you solve a lot of this quote unquote design in a silo by actually spreading your wings a little bit and saying, okay, what are pain points? Hey, G5, real quick, 60 seconds on the clock. What are your pain points? Faction intelligence? Trillions of resources? I don't know, community. What about quantum communicators? Huh? What else you got over there? Rhodinium? Huh?
And that's the big question I have. Is like, is it really, because I do think that, Defiant Solo Armadas, Borg Solo Armadas, that is, again, like people were saying, scalable content, right? It's something that is going with you throughout your ops levels. The issue we're seeing from feedback is that at the high ops levels, that content isn't providing rewards that are valuable enough to engage in. Is that correct, DJ?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that, I wouldn't say it's an easy fix, but it's a clear, concise, objective feedback point that is very easy for us to go have a conversation on. And like I said with you, DJ, I was talking with a game designer today about that very thing. And so the thing that I just want to try and focus on when we're having these discussions, and like I was talking with you earlier, DJ, is just making sure we're not overlapping multiple points into things. Like, these are two clear pain points, right? It's not as easy as just looking at all in a vacuum. Like, there's a thing for below 35, and then there are people that are in G5, and they both have valid concerns. And it's explaining why we're doing it for 35, because if we gave more to sub 35, they're going to be absolutely crushed with content, and making sure that the content we're creating is valuable throughout the entire scale. And that's why I think it was awesome. I know that you gather some feedback from like Trader and Bubba Joe on things that they would really see as valuable, so that I can continue that conversation internally. And
this is where the Tupperware conversation came in, Rev. Because
this is the exact Tupperware thing.
Yeah, this was the Tupperware conversation, because community, the point that I was making, and obviously, we have spent a lot of time on the upper end of the scale. This content is broken at 50 plus. Like, there's no other word for it, but probably 52 plus. All right. So I do acknowledge, and I apologize if maybe that's gotten a little bit more time this month. It's literally fundamentally broken. I asked Rev earlier, what do you think the sweet spot is? In my opinion, it's actually not quite as low as 35. I believe that it's probably either 42 or 43 through probably 52. I believe that is the mechanical sweet spot of this content, because even a 41 Rev can't actually get the warp range to hit a meaningful target. They're hitting down and costing themselves tremendous amounts of loot
the Borg one
because they can't get the warp range. Yeah, with the Borg one, they just
MT
can't get
talked about that because they had to use pre-existing versus the Dominion where they just went and reset the warp range to lower.
Exactly. So even 40 and 41, they have actually gotten a regressive position this month, Rev. They're down with the 35 and 39 as it related to Jem'Hadar because they can't hit an appropriate target because of warp range. So I find this this content to be probably 42, 43 through about 52 as far as its sweet spot. Outside of their community, you've got a lot of problems. And G5 has been talked about a lot, but trust me, 35 through 39 has been discussed as much because of their problems being able to engage, and then even more so, Rev, 34 and down, which comes back to the point that I want to clarify when we were talking about the Tupperware. Rev, you even said, I understand that I want players to grow into it. Echo, you said that we don't want to overload newer players into the game, and I acknowledge both of those points. But to both of you, and I asked the community as well, does anybody enjoy or is anybody even indifferent to seeing a new arc, a new feature, something bright and shiny that comes into the game and you're forbidden from playing? Like, is that a good feeling?
I can understand and totally agree with you that it doesn't feel good.
And that is kind of my point. Where the Tupperware came in, community, I said, you know, if you're 34 and down for the last 6 months now, 5 months, sorry, 5 months, for the last 5 months, Rev, you've gotten no new content.
Yeah.
Right.
Community, do you realize that? For 34 and down, you've gotten no new content in 5 months. Now, to me, Rev, that is like saying, yo, Rev, yo, Echo, listen, let's go get us a nice big T-bone steak. We'll get some roasted asparagus and a twice-baked potato and only the finest Merlot. All right, kids.
DJ, you're forgetting. I mean, there's a Mantis you can't source that they can go after just for them.
That they can't get to. But that was the 34 and down, you get leftovers.
Yeah.
You get smelly, refrigerated, freezer burnt, Tupperware leftovers. That's what you get. And that is how I view it. Now, if there are big, huge complaints about grind time, I get that, but I still think it should be on the menu. Rev, I have always been a big player advocate or a big advocate of player choice. Now, sometimes I catch heat for that. All right. And I do acknowledge for newer players in the game, there is a tremendous amount of stuff to grind, but we can't have it both ways. Do we want our selection of grind, or do you want to be prohibited from participation? And I would prefer to choose what I do and not be told I can't.
I fundamentally disagree because we've seen that, one, if it's in the game, players feel like they have to do it. You guys have stood on that hill all of the time. If you have to choose, just like we're doing with fleet commanders and faction credits, you feel like you're losing progression on something. If we add something new and shiny to the bottom, people are going to feel like they're going to have to do it, and then they're going to feel like they're losing progression on it, or we're increasing screen time. I fundamentally disagree with what you're saying right there, DJ. And I would like to say also, while this is more of a generalized game design philosophy, right? And we have a wide variety of community members here. Some people don't play any other video game ever, right? This is the only thing they play. But I do think that we have a lot of gamers that try different games out, right? How many games in general make content for brand new content for people just starting? If I think about most of the games that I've played, all the MMOs I've played, new content comes out for everybody, but the majority or bulk of it are for players that have been invested in the game and are looking for a new challenge, right? I understand fundamentally that you don't want the old Tupperware container, right? But if we make content for everyone, doesn't that sort of diminish the accomplishments and the time and the investment that some of the other players are doing, right? It's like, oh, I didn't need to come to 35. I didn't need to push to 40 because level 20 is getting it. Why did I even do this?
Let me ask a question to a surprise panelist. Ladies and gentlemen, Vice Plantsinet, Beck Likes Plants is here. Beck, let me ask you a question, because you were late joining the game. You joined, about a year and a half ago now.
January 3rd. Yes.
January, happy 1 year anniversary, happy 13-month anniversary. So you joined the game in January of 21. You came in as a player 3 years into this game and had to catch up. Now, I'm going to ask you a slightly unfair question because I know what seat you're sitting in now, but I remember conversations between the two of us where you simply said the following words: I couldn't get engaged. I couldn't get emotionally attached to this arc because it wasn't for me. I basically sat back and took the month off.
I remember that. Yeah, whenever I was a content creator, it was last year in the summer, and I did. Yeah, it's the only time I've taken time off from the game, actually.
Did you feel that month that you were motivated to go back and catch up on all the things so that you could get to the point where you could participate? Or B, did you just tell me you took the month off?
No, I took that month off. I did. My play style, I tend to be slower, and I'm still slow. But it was not in my head to rush up to get the content because I was so far away, you know.
And I think that is a really valuable perspective, Echo, that you guys have inside your four walls now that you've got to keep in mind. Not everybody is going to be motivated to just jump up and hit your targets. There's a large percentage of people, maybe not even a majority, could be a minority, but it's still a large number of people that are going to be like, well, that sucks. I guess I'm just out.
Well, luckily, Madam Vice President Beck has some information, and we've actually touched on this exact topic before, DJ. So go ahead, Beck.
Am I allowed to?
Go for it.
May I? So, for those who don't know, I am Ops 31. Have not moved very far in terms of like the last several months, but a discussion or several discussions have been had involving sub 35. I have currently been having those conversations with the powers that be about having more content specific to sub 35, because honestly, part of it stemming from that, from being before being on staff, as well as like to now, like, you know, I'm probably the smallest ops level on the panel right now, right? If I had to guess.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I play the game.
Is your Vidar maxed? Is your Vidar maxed?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Crazy, right, DJ?
94%er.
Well,
DJ, I logged into my server
29
account,
Which is why I was so dumbfounded when people were like, I was done with the Borg grind. I was like, it was really weird for me to hear all this feedback in the beginning. I was really shocked.
You know, Tiger said the same thing. I may have overestimated how many people were done.
Yeah,
well, clearly not. If only 6% of people are actually done. Crazy. All right, sorry, Beck. Continue. I'm
fine.
floored by that. It's crazy.
No, you're fine. But I've been having conversations internally about there being more content made for those of us who are sub 35, because it can be kind of like what you were saying. It can be a little bit sad to be sitting at the kids' table and see, people enjoying steak and I'm stuck with chicken nuggets. So that's a terrible analogy. But I love chicken nuggets.
Yeah, because everybody loves chicken nuggets. It's fine. You get crust of bread and water is what you guys are getting down there.
Well, I love bread too. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Just the crust, though. All right. So you've got a big announcement then for 34 and down.
I can't make any promises, but what I can say is those are discussions that are actively happening, that I get an opportunity to be a part of. So
Yeah, this goes within those conversations that you and Rev and other people were saying about like that arc within an arc kind of thing. Not saying it's exactly going to be that, but I mentioned this a few months ago that, one of the live ops people that I think we all really enjoyed as content the month of the Defiant was actually teasing me with the idea of seeing if something like that would be possible, right? And something that Beck just raised to me via DM was we actually have a lot more new players in the game over the past few months. And so 35 is not like that average or that median anymore because we've had an influx of newer players. So having these discussions about where we're setting this content level for and how we're going to do content for people that are coming in.
So the point I kind of made a few minutes ago about just kind of designing content instead of overreaching and trying to have one size fits all. I mentioned designing, technically I only mentioned it specifically for higher levels, but mentioning having teams that design content for each bracket, like just having something that is specifically for lowers, then your mids, then your highers, instead of just doing like one feature that, well, if you're in this large range, you get it. If you're not, it just kind of sucks.
So to give you some context about sort of the development like schedule for like a 10 pole, that's what people like call it, like for the month, right? Arc runners start planning about 4 to 3 months in advance for everything. So if you're talking about subsectioning an arc into 3 sort of sections, you're suggesting making it essentially 3 arcs within it. And I know the argument can be made, okay, just run the same events, just throw a new name on it and give the rewards to be something specific for their ops level. That's still a ton of work because each reward that goes out is specific for that ops level. So we're taking, instead of one reward that we're like changing for each ops level, we're taking 3 different types of rewards on 3 different types of events that we've created and then doing rewards for it.
Well, correct me if I'm
and
wrong.
we are investing in a lot of tools. And I'm thinking that this is something that may be more possible because recently, over the past few months, there has been a lot of investment in tools and automation and speeding things up. And so having a conversation like that isn't as crazy as it once was. Right?
I also might suggest, and shout out Lube. I see him in the chat because he's saying the same thing that I've said to you guys, both publicly and privately, for the last several months. It doesn't need to be a new arc. You already ran a Devore arc, so just call it up. You obviously make some adjustments to rewards, okay? But those events exist in the library.
Isn't that just seen as recycling? And people will call us being lazy.
It's not recycling for new players. They've never seen it.
It's a catch-up. They've never had that arc. They've never gotten the Stella arc. Go back to some of these older arcs and just and look at the event schedule. Now, I'm not suggesting a complete copy pasta. Obviously, rewards have to be scaled with the times. Even milestones need to be scaled with the times. Some of the mechanics, you can add things in like exos and cloaks, and that's fine. I'm not saying completely copy pasta, but you've got a framework. These arcs that some players have never seen before, that is new content to them, and it also provides a catch-up mechanism to them. It's going to provide them the ability to maybe get that older stuff knocked out a little bit quicker so that they can look forward to moving to 35 and not feel overwhelmed. You know, Beck, the month that you took off, I don't remember what content it was. It was Mantis. Okay. The month you took off, would you have been more or likely to engage in an original discovery arc or an original outlaw arc or whatever other things that we've gotten that you didn't have the opportunity to Vidar? Your Vidar's not maxed. Yeah. So let's go back to May of 19 and give you the Borg arc so that you can get a shot in the arm and max that Vidar at Ops 31 and move forward.
It does potentially mean making multiple battle passes, though, because we can't just grab the old battle pass, right? Because the battle pass for the Vidar specifically has a full unlock with a Vidar in it, and that's not.
Yeah, it
gonna
was
feel
May of
good
20.
for
Sorry,
anything.
I said 19.
So
that's not right. It was 20.
that
Well, that's true. I
I'm
do
not-
want to
I'm
add a
not
point,
saying
and I actually have a tech
things.
question.
I'm not saying that. I'm just
tech.
saying that each facet and layer is just time.
Well, let me ask this, because to my knowledge, this is how it used to work. Maybe your new tools have changed this. How it used to work is every arc runner for every event, every ops level, all this had to be manually entered in anyway. So is it even that much more time if we're talking about like event structuring, redoing rewards, resetting milestones? Because that's part of what, at least it used to be. Maybe new tech tools is easier. You used to have to do that manually anyway. Like if you wanted to set a leaderboard for 35 to 39, you had to go manually put in, this is what the rewards are, this is what this is, et cetera, and
Team
then
is
move to the next.
actively working on a lot more tools for automation. So that's why I'm saying things like this are possibly, I don't want to even say most likely, are possibly more feasible, which is why we're having these discussions and why Beck is involved in being that, like, hey, I'm sub 35, what about me? And I'm just giving context. I don't know if people are drinking because whenever I say context, but context.
That's grind. Take a shot.
Context.
No, I thought it was.
Yeah, that's the magic word today is grind. Now, I will say, I am motivated to hear that, because that is a project that Rev, you and I have been working on for 6-7 months now, is to try to get these sub arcs. So I actually am very glad to hear that. Medic and some of these other players out here in the chat, like Medic is one. He just comes to mind. He messages me, and I don't want to say that he's a constant complainer, but he's passionate. Constructive. He's very constructive about it, and he says, "God, DJ, I love Star Trek. I love your community. I love my community. I love my Alliance members. I just want to play the game. They're not letting me." And I think your own vice president, Echo, can reiterate to you the position that Medic feels. And I would come back and say, and I do understand you've got the one counterpoint, Rev, to what you were saying a second ago, is also arcs are a lot fuller today. We demand nothing less. The calendar has to be full. I mean, we're now looking at
demanding that. So
we've been looking at arcs that have an average of 100 plus events that didn't used to be. Like if you go way back, community, it was a one event a day, take it or leave it. We had monthly arcs with 20 events. So I do acknowledge that the amount of time and work gone into preparing an arc today, Echo, is very different than what it was 3 years ago. I can acknowledge that, and the community should acknowledge the calendar. That being said, I still wonder if it is as comprehensive as writing a new arc. Let's say it does take you 4 months to write an arc. Could it maybe take 4 weeks to rehash an old one?
It's totally possible, right? Because like you're saying, the foundation's already there. I don't know. I don't create the arc, so I need to understand. But the fact that we're having these conversations is where we need to start, right? Like Beck is talking about this internally. Like team members are already reaching out saying that they're interested within like a sub arc for people that maybe aren't 35 if the content is at 35. This is a content update, and a lot of people don't like the fact that this is all just conversational blue sky whiteboard stuff.
That's the purpose of these kinds of shows.
They want more finalized details, but no decision at the highest level. No decision at the highest level. Make a decision in a vacuum. I can't just come on a podcast, have a discussion, say, "Yep, that's an action we're going to do."
Well, I don't think. Hopefully, nobody's expecting. It's more of.
Oh, I am for
wow.
sure.
Thank you. Do we need to have a rehash of the Assault State of the Game pod? Oh
my gosh, please! I got my like extra padded.
Time for break, everybody. We're going to take a break now. So go ahead, Rick.
Real quick, Eco. Let me ask you. This was something that me and DJ got told a few months ago was going to be implemented to help with stability of arcs running in the future. And just to piggyback on what we're talking about, there is an arc runner every month, and we appreciate them because they work really hard. No matter who it is and how much you grade, how well they did as a player, they work their butts off. So to help that, they were supposed to be getting a secondary, works right under them every month. That was something that got started, DJ, 6-7 months ago now? How long ago was that? Yeah. Is that still ongoing, and could that person be in charge of the quote-unquote sub-arcs?
I can tell you that the team is expanding. Whether they can be in charge of a sub-arc, I don't know, because I'm not the one making the personnel calls on what they're working on. But I will point to sort of the scoring of the events for November, December, and this past January. Like, compared to the 3 or 4 months before that, how many times was there like a snap scoring fix or something wasn't properly done? There are people currently double checking and looking at metrics and trying to make things run as smoothly as possible, because we know what a big piece of feedback was. And I do know that the team is looking to expand. So whether they can or be in control of that, because I don't know. But yeah.
Okay. Well, hey,
Also,
there you go. That's an answer.
I do unfortunately have to take my exit. I'm actually like 10 minutes over for a meeting because this conversation's been so awesome.
Well, can I rapid fire a few items to you? Or
Sure.
maybe not. I gave you the list yesterday. It was in our private developer chat. I came up with, it looks like 7 or 8 just quick rapid fire questions regarding housekeeping items. Were you able to secure answers? Or Beck, were you able to secure answers to the bullet points that I laid out in developer chat yesterday as we were heading into today's show? Do either
Honestly,
of you have
with
answers?
what was happening in the community yesterday, no. Straight up, no.
Can't really get mad at you for that one. So.
I know.
I get mad at you about the Mantis comp, but I can't get mad at you about that one.
You can be mad at me for that one, but this one, we were snap in meetings, calls, and talking with the community from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m.
You know, Jace, that was it. As a matter of fact, he writes, when will Dax, Odo, and Bashir be added to the Bajoran loop? So can I share with you? Question number 1 out of 9. Okay, question number 1 out of 9 that I had coming in today. Can we add Dax and Bashir to the Gem Hadar recruit chest? That was number 1 on my list, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, it was.
He brought it up this morning, too, when we were talking.
I did all that stuff, including adding the Borg Solo Armada rare chest to 35 and 39, 35 through 39. I added that. I talked about adding yeah. Okay, I'll stop there.
Again, I'm not trying to cut you off, but I do unfortunately need exit. I think that what we can do, since we couldn't get those answers yesterday for you when you sent them to us yesterday, is that we can do our due diligence and follow up them in text. And the next time you have a podcast or you stream on Twitch, we can have.
So the next state, you're saying we'll go to the next State of the Game podcast?
No, I
don't want to wait all my. Listen, a month from now, it won't even matter. It's not going to be relevant.
No, Bashir's always going to matter to me. I love him. I need more.
All right. Live long and prosper. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much, DJ Rev, everyone here. I'm sorry that I have to take a fast exit.
Well, we do appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for being here. And that obvious conversation, obviously, Rev, having a little different tone than our last State of the Game together. And that was all my fault last time. But I like a lot of the topics that we got a chance to discuss today. I know we didn't get to everything, Rev, but before we take our first break, and I know you're probably going to split back off the simulcast to go back to your audience and talk about that a little bit. But if you don't mind, let me ask you one question before you go. Yeah. I feel like this was maybe a better than average feedback session potentially. And probably, really truthfully, is at the root core of what a State of the Game should be. Here's where we are. Here's what we need to do. Here's what we would like to do. What are some ideas about what we can do? That's probably a very, at its core, that is probably a better State of the Game than what we've had in recent times. Do you find yourself, and I know we ask this question every single month, so it's probably with a heavy... It's a very loaded question for people like you and I.
Yeah.
Do you hear what he says, and does that instill confidence in you?
Okay, so it's kind of like two-parters. I feel like a lot of players, because at the end of the day, you and I are still just players. We're not in the facility. We're not working with game design side by side, etc. We are bound by things that happen and the emotions that come with it. So with Incursions and the complete flop of what that was yesterday, it's going to influence some of my thoughts and how I hear a lot of his messages. So what I can say is I know for the past 6 to 8 months, you and I, just speaking from you and I's experience, we can definitely say that feedback is being heard and actually turning into change, whereas there were times where it was just literally dismissed. Are things great right now? Are things running perfect? Is stuff like yesterday something that we can just sweep under the rug? No. But do I believe Eco more than any other community manager this game has had? Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.